In this video, I'm going to be taking this Redcat RDS and trying to tweak this front suspension alignment so that we get a little bit more steering angle and perhaps, better driving overall. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Troy. This is Roadside RC. You tend to find me bashing and crawling and drifting and racing, plus doing product review videos and how-tos. And today we are working with the brand new Redcat RDS. Really good vehicle out of the box. And in this video, I am looking at the front suspension alignment to see if we can get a little bit more angle out of it. Good news is Redcat has all the parts that we need right with the front suspension alignment out of the box, so all we are doing is tuning what's already in here. As you see it here, this is actually the alignment that it comes with from the factory. I am going to warn you, you are looking through a fisheye GoPro lens, so it might look just a little bit odd in your view. But this steering, the leading edge wheel does get a fair amount of angle, but I'd really like to see if I can't get that angle a little bit more towards 90. And then as we do that, we need to really monitor this trailing wheel to make sure that we don't open up that Ackerman. I'm also not a big fan of a lot of toe out or crazy amounts of camber. What stops us right now is that there's actually stoppers on the inside of the knuckles that come in here and hit these inside control arms. So we're going to look to see what we can do about that. And is there anything with this alignment that allows us even more room that way? I do want to stress as we get started with this, this is not an activity for eyeballing or not taking notes. Very important the whole way through this to take notes of exactly what you changed, from where each point was mounted, for the distances and dimensions of everything. I will be using my RPM camber gauge to set a baseline camber. I have a scale with me plus some digital calipers that I will be using to measure the gaps between all of the links to make sure that not only do I get everything symmetrical side to side, but that I can also always go back to the factory alignment if I so choose. Now that I have all of the factory measurements all marked down, from camber to the length of all of these marks to how many shims are in here to what even is the toe out. Now that I have all of that recorded, the first thing I'm going to do is work on adding some caster. What that includes is me actually taking the spacer on the rear of this upper control arm, putting it in the front. That's going to start to tilt, move the arm back, which actually helps tilt that knuckle back. And if that's not enough, I'm actually going to come down here on the bottom and I'm going to do the opposite. And I'm actually going to take this front one, put it in the rear, and that'll help move that arm forward. So that will end up total twisting that knuckle. That's going to change how we gain camber as this turns, but it should also move this back and that forward to help create a little bit extra potential for angle. We'll have to see if it actually results in it. To do that on the top up here, it's actually rather simple. 2 screws and this shock tower will come off along with the support for those upper control arms, and you can move everything back around, slide that back on there. On the bottom, it's a little bit harder just because of all the stuff that's around it, but I would probably most likely take these 2 screws out, get this whole piece out, shift everything around, put it back together. Moving those spacers did actually gain me some angle here. I was able to go from this total steering angle to this one, so we gained a few degrees there, which is actually pretty cool. I do believe it might be the only thing I can do though without removing some material from those stoppers. I can change other alignment and other geometry, but if it's that stopper is physically keeping me from going any further, I think I'm going to have to get rid of it and hope that I don't regret that later. And just like that, handy dandy cutoff wheel takes care of this real easy. And now we can get all the way past where we would want to be. Oh, looky what we can do now after resetting the steering endpoints. Oh, trailing edge tire gets almost to 90 degrees. Oh my gosh, do you know how much that'll save you from spinning out? But what I'm not as stoked about now is how open the Ackerman is. I'm going to drive it first, see how it feels, but that Ackerman is really open at that big angle. And so what we're going to have to look at is that really what we want? Let me drive it first and see how it feels. The car actually drove pretty good with this alignment this way, but it was just a little bit twitchy in that mid corner. And so I'm thinking what I want to try is to actually make the Ackerman just a little bit more closed, not quite as open as it is. What I'm thinking about doing in this scenario is actually changing the dimensions here where we're actually mounting. We're mounting the steering. That'll actually change a little bit side by side how that geometry works. And so I'm going to start there, and I will check back in a little bit with you with what I found. Quick bonus tip for you here when it comes to alignment. We're really focused on the front, but for the rear, what I noticed is measuring the rear camber and looking at my rear tire wear so far, looks like I could gain just a little bit by taking some camber out of the car, because I'm not even getting to this outside edge ever. And so what I'm doing is taking these links right here from 15 millimeters, and I'm measuring about 3 degrees-ish or so of camber, lengthening these links 1 millimeter, going from 15 to 16 millimeters, now gets me in the 1.5 to 2 degrees of camber, which should give me a little bit more contact patch and help me with traction with this car. All right, I have now spent hours out here, so I really hope this is useful for someone. Hours out here redoing all of this, and here is the final settings that I have. I'm going to share with you right now. So these upper links really only extended them 1 millimeter. They were 15 millimeters, extended them out to 16. Steering links back here, they were 23 millimeters, went out to 26. However, I did change where the link was mounted. So the wiper mounting location is actually exactly the same. However, I think you can see it easier here. From the factory, it was actually mounted in this furthermost hole right back here in the back. I was able to move it in closer to the hub, just right over here. That is my recommendation for you. Move it over there. Did extend this lower link 1 millimeter. It was 6, extended them out to 7 millimeters. As I mentioned earlier, the wiper location for mounting actually is the same. However, I moved its position related to the servo horn. So it was out here at like 1.5 marks back in from the front. I've now moved it into 5 marks from the front back in there to adjust that geometry. And then lastly, these upper arms, I moved all of the spacers to the front, and the lower arms, I moved all the spacers to the rear. And then, as I showed you earlier, I have hacked the bump stops off of those lower arms. So those are no longer there to interfere with getting absolute full lock side to side. And I do want you to make sure you do not forget that I also changed, as the bonus item in here, this rear camber out 1 degree by adding 1 millimeter of length to those rear links. Now, I will say, when you look at this in the final result here, this might be a little bit too parallel for some folks. Some folks might not like how parallel I have this, but driving it here in my small test track here in my garage, it was a huge difference. I can't explain to you how much better this actually really was in driving. So much easier to drive this car in general. So if you're getting this Redcat RDS, I really hope that you actually try these, all right? So on the Redcat website, they're gonna actually have all of this factory dimensions and alignment settings. So that way, if you don't like my settings, you can actually put them back, which is awesome and very good for you. But this really has made it very easy for me to drive this car. So if you find that the factory settings may be a little bit frustrating, maybe you're not exactly happy with how the car is driving, give these a shot. I think you might like them. Now, as we close out today, thank you for watching. If you're interested in any of the other stuff I'm doing with this Redcat RDS, I have a whole Redcat RDS playlist that I'm building out over here. Click on it and you will be able to see everything that I've done with this car. So hope this was useful for you. If you have any questions, post down below. We'll see you later. Thank you and goodbye.